Just how much producing does a song need to really shine? And then on the flip side, at what point does this producing make a song overproduced? I explored this in a recent video, in which I had written a little song snippet and produced 3 different versions of it. The first in about 15 minutes, the second in about an hour, and the third in many hours. I then posed this question: which version do you prefer? The response that I got was really quite illuminating. Different people, of course, had their own particular taste, and that made them inclined to prefer one version over the other for their own reasons. But on the whole, the consensus actually did point towards one specific version as the overall favorite. Now, if you want to find out which version, you gotta smash like, slam subscribe, hammer the notification. No, actually, you can just keep watching the video and you'll find out that way. Although I do encourage you to do those things. So, what I'm gonna do first is play you each version, and as it plays, I'm gonna show you samples of people's feedback about that version. And that'll give you a sense of why some people preferred that particular version, and why others dispreferred. There really should be a word for that, shouldn't there? Anyways, without further ado, let's jump into version 1. Now, when it comes to producing music, 15 minutes is not a lot of time. I had just long enough to perform the song live with acoustic guitar while also simultaneously singing, and then take that performance and do some very basic mixing. Just like a dash of EQ, dash of reverb. So this, of course, lent itself to a pretty bare bones, honest, intimate, you could even say raw, kind of a take on the song. And as you'll see, this approach is not without its benefits. Let's take a listen.
Something about the stars, it makes me think back. Strange how we come so far then lose what we had. Seems only yesterday you took your leave. Life disassembles and no life grieves, then it's gone. Somehow the rest just goes on. The story's ended and you're light years away from us now. The wounds have mended, but you're light years away from us now. Light years away.
So, version 2. With an hour, I had a bit more time to actually get into producing the song versus just doing a performance of it. I was able to record the vocals and guitar separately. I was able to record multiple layers of the guitar to get that nice wide studio doubled sound. I was able to add additional elements such as shaker and electric guitar lines and backup vocals. But that being said, an hour still is not very long. So I had to work very quickly, just kind of going with the flow of inspiration. I didn't have time to do a lot of tweaking and polishing, and I certainly did not have time to explore all of my ideas and really fill out the arrangement. But as we will see, this kind of spontaneity and judiciousness and focus has its benefits. Let's take a listen.
Something about the stars that makes me think back. Strange how we come so far then lose what we had. Seems only yesterday you took your leave. Life disassembles and no life grieves, then it's gone. But somehow the rest just goes on. And you're light years away from us now. The wounds have mended, but you're light years away from us now. Light years away.
So, version 3. With so much time at my disposal, the world was my oyster. Or the song was my oyster. The effect of all this extra time was actually twofold. On the one hand, I was able to add a lot more elements and use more of my ideas. I did lots of extra percussion and drum programming, I did a bunch of extra keyboard layers, and I just generally tried to fill everything out. On the other hand, the other effect of this extra time was that I was able to go more in-depth with the finesse of the parts that were already there. So for example, with the vocals, in version 2 it was just one take straight through. In version 3, it was many different takes of each section, comped together to get every detail and nuance just the way I wanted it. Another example is with the acoustic guitar, that percussive slap. In version 3, I actually went in and found what I felt was the best version of it, and then copied and pasted that version to every instance to really keep the groove consistent and driving. Now, as we will see, of these two results of having more time, being able to add more things and being able to tweak what was already there, one of these has a much stronger effect on people's initial impression of version 3 and how they feel about it compared to the other versions. We'll get more into that in a little bit, but for now, I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind as we listen to version 3.
There's something about the stars that makes me think back. It's strange how we come so far to lose what we had. Seems only yesterday you took your leave. Life disassembles and no life grieves that it's gone, and somehow the rest just goes on. The story's ended and you're light years away from us now. The wounds have mended but you're light years away from us now. Light years away.
How can people not like those drums? Those are sweet. Doom, doom, bah, doom, doom. Y'all are foolish.
So as you can see, there's a lot of different opinions flying around here, and we can't necessarily single out any one version as being objectively the best. That being said, as I mentioned towards the beginning, the overall consensus did fall more heavily towards one version in particular. That version was number 2. When I put the numbers together, about 45% of voters specifically singled out version 2 as being their favorite, with an additional 27% saying they'd like to hear a blend of multiple versions, with version 2 being included in that blend. From this, we could easily draw the conclusion that there's a clear balance to be struck between not enough producing on one hand and too much producing on the other hand. We could say that version 1 is a bit underproduced and version 3 is a bit overproduced, with version 2 therefore being just right. However, there's an important caveat here, and this relates back to what I mentioned before playing you version 3. The idea that time spent producing can mean different things. It could mean spending more time adding new elements, but it could also mean spending more time tweaking or even removing bits of what's already there. 2 comments I got in favor of version 1 nicely highlight this. First, we have this comment from John, who says, "You could have spent 4 hours on doing really minuscule changes to version 1. Adding a bunch of instruments and backup vocals is a much different change than, say, adding a really quiet track of ambient background conversation from a subway station." Then we had Kyler, who says, "I think it'd be cool to add light piano to that version, and even the shaker or other small kit elements. But anything that gets major attention other than your vocal is getting in the way for me." That all got me thinking, what would it sound like to take version 1 and then do a lot more producing on it, but without straying away from that live, intimate sound? The result is what I'm calling version 1 prime. It sounds like this.
Something about the stars that makes me think back. Strange how we come so far to lose what we had. Seems only yesterday you took your leave. Life disassembles and no life grieves, then it's gone. Somehow the rest just goes.
Alright, so jumping back to the other end of the spectrum. With the sole exception of my dad, everyone who cast a vote for version 3 was someone with experience writing and producing their own music. And I think this made them more inclined to enjoy and kind of geek out on the additional elements, rather than just finding them to be a bit much. Now, when the feedback first started coming in, I had a little bit of a minor existential crisis, because it was like, I did all this extra work on version 3, and it seemed like, if anything, it just made people like it less. What am I doing with my life? However, I came to realize that, as I touched on earlier, people were probably reacting more to all the additional elements than they were to things like the carefully re-recorded vocals. I think this comment from Brianna kind of sums it up nicely, where she said, if you could insert the vocals from 3 into number 2, that would be my fave. So, is it simply a matter of all the additions being too much, but the tweaking and polishing being desirable? To test this, I've made a new version, where I took version 3 with all of its polish and simply stripped away most of the elements that were added from version 2 to version 3. I'm calling this version 2.5, and it sounds like this.
There's something about the stars that makes me think back. It's strange how we come so far to lose what we had. Seems only yesterday you took your leave. Life disassembles and no life grieves that it's gone, and somehow the rest just goes on. Stories ended and you're light years away from us now. Wounds have mended, but you're light years away from us now. Light years away.
Alright, with all that, I have one final question for you. Between those two versions, 1 prime and 2.5, which do you feel now represents the best direction for the song to go in? Let me know what you think. And until next time, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to smash like, slam subscribe, and pummel the notification bell. I feel like that's even funnier when I say it without all the air horns and stuff.